the other thing is that so far, up to this point when Mario Van Peebles breaks into this cave, pretty much everything that's happening so far has happened in the first movie. We're seeing, very Kurgan-esque, like burning the village is very similar to him fighting the Highlanders in the first movie. Him tracking down Nakano is very similar to him fighting Ramirez in the first, or the Kurgan fighting Ramirez in the first movie. So, it's a lot quicker than the first movie. There's not a whole lot of build-up to it, but at least those parts are almost copy-pasted right in there, because instead of taking Ramirez's power, Connor, becomes friends with him. And instead of taking Nakano's power, Connor becomes his student. And then, some big baddie shows up and kills his master, basically.
Right, there was that whole scene in the first Highlander where they were sword fighting, and for the first time Connor got the drop on Ramirez and had his blade right up to his throat, and Ramirez had this kind of like, is this the time it's going to happen? Look on his face, and then Connor declined. So it's kind of reinforcing these good Connor traits.
So this is the first introduction of the lady character in this movie, and Alex. The problem is that we know the Highlander's gonna bone her as soon as she shows up on camera.
These women are not immune to these charms. These women just are so susceptible to magical men.
And they're not like ditzy, they're hot, but they're not like dumb. In the first movie, she was into old swords and also a coroner, I guess, or some
CSI,
sort of CSI detective. And then in the skipping over the second one, in the third one here, we see that she is an archaeologist, and she also delves into old artifacts and those kinds of things. She has her own museum, like that kind of stuff. And she shows up here to help with the dig site, which is the former mountain dojo of Nakano. And she, you know what's going to happen.
You see them setting this up, yeah. So she's just primed to be bone material for Connor later on in the movie.
They have a security guard down there, which you don't really need a security guard for an archaeological dig. It's I could see that. It's just one guy. Lights start going over, whatever. The first thing that happens is he goes down this long tunnel, and there's a wooded plank on the side of this tunnel that they've been digging. It's actually like in the side, not like at the end or anything.
Yeah,
and he goes, and there's a bunch of noise happening, so he goes up to it, and then they bust through the wall, which makes me think that they dug up to that point, because that's not where the that's not where the archaeologists dug.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a wall. You were talking about that.
It sort of seemed like Kane and crew were waiting for somebody to sort of show up at the side of the wall. Like, they're just like, all right, we gotta get out of here. We've been here for hundreds of years. This is terrible. We gotta dig through. And like, wait, what's this? This is a wall. All right, well, let's completely dig out like a doorway-sized clearing in the rocks and the debris of this door, and we'll wait, and then
we'll make spooky noises
and
try to lure someone down.
We'll shake it, it'll be great. We'll shake on this. He's like, come on, we're so bored, guys. Let's
And the first guy that gets close enough, we're just gonna grab him.
It's not even that the guy gets close. He's like, looks like these boards are shaking, and there's noises behind it, and there's dust coming out of here. Let me stick my face right up to it.
And that makes me also assume that in like the Marianas Trench or something, there's like somebody was on a boat and they were a Highlander and they died out to sea, and then they got trapped within the water pressure that's that deep down in like the Marianas Trench, and they're just sitting there like, fuck. Like, I'm immortal, I'm just sitting at the bottom of the ocean.
Well, they're just inching forward, like year after
they're just
year.
like climbing up like cliffs underwater. And eventually they'll make it back on shore, and Connor will be like, fuck.
Again.
And this will probably get cut, but I'm going to use it anyways. There's a movie called The Stuff. It's on Netflix. I'm pretty sure it's still on Netflix. It's a ridiculous movie. One of the big problems with that movie is that they go from place to place throughout the plot, and it serves no purpose whatsoever. The plot could have easily been in like a town, or maybe like a state, but instead it's across the entire nation, and they get on a bus, and they get on a boat, and they get on a plane, and they go from this place to that place in every fucking scene. And I feel like this movie was trying to be more diverse by having different locations, but it just muddles the plot. And that's the first place that kind of pops up that they didn't need to have anybody in is Marrakesh, because that's where Connor and his adoptive son are now.
Upon reviewing of this and doing some research that we didn't possibly have time to do before we did this review, there are apparently two different versions of how Kane arrived in the United States. In one version, the version we first saw, it showed him like stepping off of some freighter ship, and I can see that.
There's just a boat behind him, he's walking down the dock.
You know, he's probably got some gold coins or some trinkets or something that's worth something, and he could see some like Russian sea captain like, hey, if you're going over here, I'll go take me with you, I'll keep myself, to myself.
Duh.
I think that's the final dimension cut. I'm not sure if that's exactly how they're separating. So they do call it the final dimension, and one version also calls it the sorcerer. And both versions we watched, the one we watched the first time, I believe that was the final dimension, and then the sorcerer version, where he just uses his illusion powers, which his powers to make things appear real gives him the power to teleport through space and time and get new clothes.
And I'm just baffled by why anybody would even set that up. Because, like you said, I mean, there's a keen difference between illusion and real sorcery, or like conjuring something into existence that's real that you can touch, or traversing a dimension in space and time and then popping out somewhere totally different. That's a very different thing from making it look like something is something else. These aren't the same thing, and as it goes on in that direction, it becomes apparent that the filmmakers didn't have a clear grasp on what illusions were. And so yeah, the one for me, arriving on a boat kind of makes most sense, even if it's not particularly exciting, because if he had the ability to traverse time and space, guys, this magical ore cave is starting to become more and more plausible as we go on talking about it.
Because maybe he couldn't use the time space bendy thing to get out of it.
Right, like there was like an anti-magical ore. I mean, it's crazy. And he gets put in the crazy ward, as Jake suggested, next to... Now I'm gonna, before I say it, think about this. Think about in popular culture, when you see a depiction of like a whimsical crazy ward, where you don't want to be depressed. We don't want the audience to be depressed about crazy people. How do we make it whimsical and fun? Have a guy who thinks he's Napoleon.
Yeah.
It's easy peasy. He thinks he's Napoleon. That's cute.
He comes with newspaper hat accessory.
And he frees after Connor convinces him that he is one of Napoleon's agents who is going to assassinate one of Napoleon's enemies. Napoleon frees him and creates a big enough ruckus for him to escape from his binds in the hospital. And I feel like I should mention this. Like, I was just thinking about it, and the whole flashback to the French Revolution, which is a whole, again, hallmark from the first movie, showing these different periods that were important in his life before. But in connection with the Napoleon guy, it seems like there may have been this dropped area where he actually met Napoleon. In a flashback.
And that's how he knows how to talk to the fake Napoleon, the crazy Napoleon.
Right. That would have made sense, because as they continue to show, and it's not really important to the story, actually, but as the movie goes on, they show you more bits of what happened in France, and at some point, his head was called for in Paris. Yeah. During the French Revolution, someone was like, "Oh, well, let's get this MacLeod guy and cut his head off too."
Yeah, I imagine the writers. I imagine the writers were probably like, what would be the most dangerous time period for Highlander to be in? French Revolution, because they're cutting everybody's heads off. Oh my god!
Right, and if he had been an actual agent for Napoleon or having done some mission for Napoleon, there would be a real logical reason why the revolution would want his head. And so it could have tied all in really nicely together, where he had this contact. But I think it was maybe just kind of just cut that out of there because it really doesn't tell the tale any better. And then after that, didn't he end up going and hooking up with a hooker? I'm surprised her name wasn't Candy. And yet, like, there's these like really strange gaps in his knowledge. He doesn't know what a condom is, so he like puts it in his mouth and tries to chew on it like it's a gum or something. And then, but then meanwhile, he knows things like terms like hanky panky and hocus pocus. After he kind of tools around for a little bit, trying to recreate as many Kurgan moments as he possibly can.
Yeah, and here's a thing that they kind of rewrite from the first movie because the lady in the first movie is doing all of her detecting and trying to find out who Nash is, McLeod, and she finds nothing until she finds his birth certificate, which was actually like a dead baby's birth certificate that he used to fake him living in New York. So he barely left any paper trail at all, and that was like the one thing that he tripped up on that she found out. Alex in this movie finds a registry of McLeod's that he wrote his fucking name on. That was like, yeah, I'm a McLeod. Like, way to be secretive about it.
So I think that's actually the owners of the property. So he's like, all these McLeods owned this place before me, but now my name's Nash now. It's not McLeod, and it's my property, but I'm not a McLeod like the other guys that own this place. I'm a Nash.
But I'm a McLeod.
Yeah.
So
I'm a McLeod.
It's like, okay. Perfect.
And that's the other thing in the TV show, and obviously the movie isn't part of the TV show, but in the TV show there were a couple of Highlanders that specifically like lived in shrines and things, knowing full well that no other Highlanders would fight them there.
Mm-hmm. So that they were safe.
So for him just to be like, no, I don't care. Like, I don't think in other shows and movies, I don't think it's an option. They just can't do it. I think they're just compelled to not fight. So how was he just like, was it an illusion that they were fighting?
But like, if they had made it obvious that Kane had just made it look like he was fighting Connor, so then Connor was the one who violated the rule, which is why his sword exploded, that would have been like a really good twist on it.
Absolutely.
Like, oh, you violated the rule. The fucking rule destroyed your sword, you know? And
he's just standing outside projecting his image.
And then like, just kind of like, big fucking grin, you know?
Yeah,
like,
and then he flies up.
But yes, now with a lady there to help him get his sword up, he's able to fix his actual sword using some steel that was from like an ingot found inside the Nakano cave.
Yeah.
So now it's this kind of fusing of the past and the present, fusing a gift left behind by Ramirez and a gift left behind by Nakano, his other mentor. So it's this kind of like tying everything together kind of moment. And it's not bad.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Except that there was just this gratuitous callbacks to Highlander 1. All these like sweeping shots of him as
there
he's
were at
like
least
swinging
5
his sword.
helicopter shots over the...
like half the budget are helicopter flyovers.
I know I saw hills and magic.
So they continue their fight. At one point, Kane uses his illusion powers, and Kane walks over a section of like walkway that's not actually there, but it supports him momentarily. I'm back. They still don't know. They've done the whole movie. They still can't figure out what it is.
It's not. It's not an illusion.
And they have.
Is it cartoon physics? Where you think that you're walking on something until it disappears and then you fall?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you walk off a cliff and you don't know until you look down?
Speaking of cartoons, there was another very Looney Tunes-esque moment in the fight where Connor chops Kane in half horizontally.
And he's holding himself
He's
up
holding himself
on the
up,
rails.
or torso up on the rails, right, and then he like
walks himself back over to his legs.
And then he sets himself back down, and then he heals himself. And it's like he's not even fazed by this at all.
Yeah, Connor gets shot like 6 times, and he's incapacitated for a couple hours on the way to the hospital.
Right.
But King gets cut in half, and he's just like, no, I'm good. Well, see, what happens is King gets the world's knowledge, realizes what a dick he was, and decides to, in anticipation of the ozone layer melting, create a dome around the Earth to
Oh.
protect everyone from the UV rays of the sun.
Oh, nice. And he feels so bad about being the guy who killed Connor, who he now understands a really nice guy. He then takes on Connor's identity and uses his illusion powers to appear to be Connor. And then he exists into the future and becomes an old man. And you see where this is going.
It's before 2.
Guess what? It went Highlander 1, Highlander 3, Highlander 2.
What?
Oh.
Incepted.
I enjoyed this movie for the most part. There were a lot of parts that wanted to be Highlander 1. I think after Highlander 2 sucked so bad that they decided that the only way to rectify it would be to make a similar movie to Highlander 1 without taking any risks on aliens or time travel or space domes or whatever, and just take it back to its roots, which was a good idea, except for it steals so much from the first movie that it's obvious at every turn. And the enjoyment comes from that a little bit. They kind of mess with the story and the formula a little bit, which is nice. When they deviate from it, when you have the illusion, I thought was interesting. When you have the different characters were interesting. I feel like if Mario Van Peebles hadn't played it so close to the Kurgan, that he could have made a really interesting character out of Kane. And you see little bits of it, like when he steals the 3-card Monte guy's glasses, or, you know, there are different points where you can see that he could have been a really good character on his own, but it just wasn't written that way. So that's kind of how I feel about the whole movie. It was good. It was much better by leagues than Highlander 2, but it's a Highlander 1 ripoff.
I agree with that too. Highlander 3 was definitely damage control over Highlander 2. I mean, it had been several years since it had come out, and the TV show was doing pretty well. It was in its second season. But they really wanted to get people's faith back up in a Highlander movie. And it was fun. I admit I'm a Highlander apologist. I really like...
Well, you gotta represent, Josh. I don't blame you for that.
I like the mythology of Highlander, and I like everything about it, so I can kind of overlook the flaws here and there, and I had a good time watching it. It was fun. It's dumb, yes, but it's dumb fun. And what they did well, they did very well, and what they did bad, I just pretend that it wasn't there.
This movie just made it really apparent to me that, you know, as these guys suggested, they were just going for give me another one of those. Like, I like the last one, give me another one of those. And I think with how people approached situations like that in the time period is very much different than how it is now. If this had happened in the last 10 years, where Highlander came out and then someone made Highlander 2 and it bombed, they wouldn't try to do it like this. They would have went to a straight reboot. But with the time as it was, like, reboots weren't a huge thing in like the mid-90s as they are now.
Yeah, and,
you know?
and 3 came out in 94, so that would have been a 8-year Actually, they would have been rebooted, you're right.
Right, it would have been rebooted. And so, you know, it kind of almost feels like a reboot, like we've been talking about. They hit on a lot of the same points. And I guess, one way or the other, I think that this isn't a good movie. Because it just really brings almost nothing new to the table. And any time that I really enjoyed myself in the movie and I liked what I was seeing, it was something that I really liked out of Highlander, and I would have liked that experience a whole lot more. So, aside from being a completionist or really liking that first one, give me another one of that, it's not a good movie. Is there a way to make me a Highlander, Josh? Can I be bitten by a radioactive Highlander? Can we try that?
If we can find one, I mean, it's worth a shot. I really don't think it's possible, but I mean, it never hurts to try.
Is it like a gypsy curse? Do you have to run over a Highlander's mom with your car?
And then they like walk up and they like brush your cheek with the back of their hand and say, Highlander. All right, that's enough.
Yeah.
Peanut butter disaster.